You're listening to the Farm Report Podcast with Jake and Corey, brought to you by Indians Baseball Insider and broadcast on the Smoke Signals Podcast Network. We're talking Tribe.
Listen, let's play ball. Shoot it around. Let's play ball, baby. Bang down the stones. Play ball.
Well, good day, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever and whenever you happen to be tuning in, we are glad to have you aboard. I'm Jake Dungan, minor league content coordinator for Indians Baseball Insider, joined as always by Mahoning Valley Scrappers beat writer Corey Christen. And Corey, are you still amped up from that Indians game last night? Of course, this is Saturday morning as we were recording this.
Well, it's funny because I was in Pittsburgh last night. I know, before Indians fans come to my house with pitchforks and torches. I live about a stone throw away from the Pennsylvania line, so Cleveland and Pittsburgh are about equidistant from me. And I went down to the Pirates game last night, and the Clemente wall, the right field wall in Pittsburgh, has the scoreboard on it. And I was looking towards the later part of the game, and meanwhile, Pittsburgh played the Marlins, and those guys are in a wild card race in the National League. And it was a really good game in front of me, but I kept an eye on the Indians score the whole time. And I was looking, bottom of the eighth inning, 3-1, and then top of the ninth, 3-1, bottom of the ninth. I see 3-2, and I'm like, oh, crap, I need to see what's going on. I find out Ramirez hits the home run, and then I pulled out MLB.TV on my phone, and I start watching the Indians game. Meanwhile, there's a really good real baseball game happening in front of me, but I'm watching the Tribe, and Naquin hits the walk-off. And as the play's going on, I'm standing in my seat. This is we're like in the seventh inning of the Pirates game in front of me. So everyone's kind of hanging out, relaxing, watching. And I'm like standing out of my seat, getting amped and like yelling. And everybody's like, what is this idiot doing here? And they're asking me like, what happened? And I said, Tyler Naquin hit a walk-off inside the park home run for the Indians. So now everyone's pulling their phones out. Listen, for the Indians, This is one of those moments that if a team goes deep into October that they look back on as a turning point or a momentum shifter or just something to reflect on. This is a big moment. And I mean, it's 10:15 in the early. And I probably watched the walk-off like 60 times already this morning. I mean, I just woke up and smiled and watched it. And I want to give a quick shout-out to, I'm not going to name anyone in particular, but those that have editing skills and put Tom Hamilton's call over the video from Fox Sports Ohio. I think that's fantastic. I'm still amped. I'm still geeked over it.
I tell you what, in the last couple of years, I've really tried to self-discipline myself into becoming more objective and watching Indians game. And I've done a pretty good job of that in watching baseball games and trying not to get too emotionally involved. But I tell you what, even if I was in that press box last night, there was no way I could have kept my composure because I was surprised I didn't get any complaints from the neighbors, just me screaming at the top of my lungs. It was unbelievable watching that all unfold. I did the same thing for Jose Ramirez's home run, too. And I'm like, as soon as Jose hit that home run, I'm like, Indians might win this thing because it's just so unbelievable to see them pull this off. And not only you have the historical parameters, first walk-off inside the park home run for the Indians since 1916, so 100 years in the making. And then you have the same guy record walk-off RBIs on back-to-back nights. Of course, Naquin had the walk-off sac fly in the series finale against the White Sox, and now he has to walk off inside the park home run. He's taking a beating, although he said he'll gladly take any of those beatings from his teammates after those walk-off celebrations. Just an exciting couple of days for the rookie.
Now, here's where we can start to bring this in. A lot of media position Michael Fulmer of the Tigers as the Rookie of the Year, the leading candidate. have the last few days put Naquin ahead of him in that race and put him in the top spot? I think you could make a case for yes.
Here's the thing: Naquin has points to his resume, while Michael Fulmer yesterday got shelled by the Red Sox. His numbers still look good, but he gave up I think like 6 runs, and I don't think he even got out of the 5th inning. So he lost a couple of points. So that evens the race, or if it even puts Naquin ahead, but it certainly changed the outlook of the race as of right now. So we'll see things go into September. But I see Naquin get back on track because he was slumping there a little bit for a while.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, I think this is one of those moments that when a team goes into October, then they look back on this and they look at it as a turning point. I think this it's a huge win, and it's not against they weren't facing a slouch team or anything like that. They weren't facing the Angels or the A's or anything like that. This is the Blue Jays we're talking about. They're a contender as well. So when you win big games like that against a contender, it certainly boosts your team morale.
So I think I look back and I think about the Jason Giambi walk-off game against the White Sox in September, a game in which I was in attendance. Chris Perez blew the save, then Giambi comes up in that 9th inning rally and then hits the walk-off homer. That was very exciting, and I've got the same feeling from Naquin's walk-off last night. I don't know if I put that above Giambi's walk-off because that was a special moment and a special point during the season with the Tribe winning 10 in a row to finish off the year and clinch that wild card spot. We'll have to see how this season finishes out before I decide whether or not this moment was more special than Giambi's moment. But they're pretty neck and neck right now, I would say, as far as excitement based on the historical ramifications of it and the competition, like you said, because the Blue Jays are a pretty darn good team.
Again, historical ramifications. If the Indians follow this up and continue to improve and win, then this is going to be one of those defining moments, just like Giambi's was back in, was that 13? That seems like it was just yesterday, and it was 3 years ago.
We're here talking about the minor league stuff, and that's why we want to bring up Naquin because, he's just recently graduated to the major leagues from the minors, and we had the chance to get to follow his career throughout the system. And at least I got to know him in Akron. He's a great guy, and I'm so happy to see him succeed like this and wish him all the best. But moving on to the current minor league system and what's going on there, going over to your neck of the woods, the Mahoning Valley Scrappers recently had their all-star break in the New York Penn League. And there were, as we mentioned in the last show, there was a bunch of Scrappers, 6 of them named the all-star team, and a lot of them got to appear in the game, and a couple made a significant impact, including the New York Penn League MVP, Erlen Serta, who had a 3-run home run in the 4th inning, which helped put the New York Penn League South All-Stars up 4-3 at the time, and that they eventually went on to win 9-5. So, Corey, just talk a little bit about Erlen Serta and what you've seen from him this year, getting to know him, and how and what do you think about him getting this honor in the New York Penn League Midsummer Classic?
Serta's an interesting prospect, Jake, and he's been in the system. A lot of people wouldn't know this because in Mahoning Valley, it's rookies and it's first-year players and young Latin American talent when they if they sign at a relatively young age. Serta's been in the system for 4 years already. A lot of people don't realize that. And when you talk to a guy like him, he understands that development is a process, and he has his own way to go about things, and he has his own game he plays. But at the same time, he has a little bit of moxie and a little bit of swagger to him that that this team in Mahoning Valley, they started off slow. They started off 5-17, and I think they're I think 22 games over 500 since. So it's a team that's been undergoing a turnaround. And actually, in Mahoning Valley, there's a group of people that frequently go to games, and when Serta comes up to bat, they'll start chanting MVP, and you can hear it up in the press box. And, I mean, he's done it all for Mahoning Valley this season. He's second on the team in home runs. He's leading the team in RBIs. He's their cleanup hitter basically every game. And Yeah, he hit a big home run in the All-Star game, got the MVP, and he even told reporters after the game, like he said, as soon as he left, he knew that was the MVP. He knew that was a clincher for the MVP. So for a guy like him, who's been on the road for essentially 4 seasons now, and who's been kind of floating around, Dominican League, Arizona League, now to Mahoning Valley, he saw a little time in Lake County this year. I think he went up for a cup of coffee. And I even asked Edwin Rodriguez, the Scrappers manager, about this. And he said that cup of coffee, even though it was just one game up in Lake County, a new taste of air, a taste of new air, was just kind of what he needed. He needed a breath of fresh air up there. And, he played his game up there. He got to see that. And then he came back down. And he kind of just took over in a sense of, like I said, he's hitting cleanup. He's been pretty consistent with the bat. He plays a solid second base now. And, I think that this is the kind of thing that Erling can look back on and build upon. And if he's one of these guys that is going to slowly turn into one of a bona fide, legitimate middle infield prospect, then he has the qualities to motivate himself. He has the ability to look back on things and to build off of things, and he's improved this season. Now, Mahoning Valley hasn't been home since the All-Star break. I have not seen the team yet. They actually come home tonight, Saturday, for a weekend series before they hit the road. They go up to Brooklyn middle of the week. So I was gonna get Serta's thoughts on things and see what he thinks on just going to the game in general, getting the experience. He was there with 5 teammates, and you mentioned there was an impact made from quite a few. Juan Hillman threw an inning. Todd Isaacs had, I believe he scored a run as well, and then Gabriel Mejia got some time. So it's just a little microcosm of what the Scrappers have done this season. They started off again slow, but ever since I think it was July 10th is the date, they're playing at that 20 games over 500 mark, and they're putting themselves in position for a wild card race in the New York Penn League. And I think this kind of thing with the 6 All-Stars and with Serta getting the MVP, this is a thing that the team can look and build upon and they can get motivated by. I really am. I'm excited to see that. I'm really happy to see that he got that.
Speaking of the Scrappers, there's because he just got his 2016 campaign underway, but guy we talked about a lot in our last podcast, Brady Aiken got his first win with the Scrappers, pitching 5 innings of 1-run ball, gave up 3 hits, walked 3, struck out 6 in that game against Batavia. So very nice to see him get back on the right track. Those 6 strikeouts, nice to see. I don't know if his velocity was up a little bit, or maybe he was just locating his pitches better. Probably a little bit of both, but very nice to see him get back on track and get his season finally off on the right foot. So fun tidbit about Aiken. I was up at the Indians game on Tuesday against the White Sox when Kluber pitched. I think that was a 3-1 Indians victory. So and I was sitting with my dad at the third base side in the lower bowl of the stadium because I was celebrating my birthday. And literally, I was checking Twitter, and literally 2 sections away, Brady Aiken was sitting and watching the game because he was celebrating his birthday. I believe it was his 20th birthday. So, so that's kind of fun to think about, that we were both celebrating our birthday, and we were sitting practically in the same section at the Indians game. And then he goes out the next day, and it's to Batavia, and he pitches 5 quality innings and gets his first affiliated ball win. So, looking forward to seeing how the rest of his season goes. Corey, what are your thoughts?
Well, he did throw 5 innings in the 6 Ks, but he did give up a home run. Now, in his second start, that's his second home run he's given up. So that's something he has to watch. He's maybe keeping – I don't see film on the home run, but maybe he's keeping his changeup. It's not moving, or it's not locating right, or maybe his fastball, he's just leaving it up. That's something to watch. But, I mean, we talked about it before. It's a matter of him just getting out there, getting his feet wet. He needs to get experience in innings. We know what he can do. the velocity when he was in Mahoning Valley was a bit of an issue. It's down a little bit from before surgery. So, it's about the process for him. It's going to take quite a while for Aiken to get his legs and to get back to, I think, the form that we know he can pitch in. But 5 innings, 3 hits and a run, we'll take that from him in his second start.
Absolutely. So I would say he maybe has 2-3 more starts for the season. So that'll be interesting to see how his the rest of the season goes, and interesting to see how his velocity goes. But like we said last week, in pitching, I think he still has restraints. He has the pitch limits and innings limits due to Tommy, as is normal for Tommy John surgery outpatients. But going into the off season, he's going to be able to have his regular off season work ahead of him, and he's going to be able to prepare like normal for the next upcoming season. So what we see from him heading into next season, whether it be again at Mahoning Valley or maybe they think he can go to Lake County, but what season after a full off season of normal workouts and preparation, I think will be closer to what we can expect from Brady Aiken moving forward.
Sure. I just want to see him. I want to see him put consistent outings up. I don't want to see any, he's pitching a 1-hit shutout one day and then he's giving up, 3 runs on 8 hits the next game. I don't want to see that. I want to see consistency. I want to see his ability to throw strikes with that fastball. And like I said, he's given up 2 home runs in 2 starts. If it's a matter of the fastball staying up or if it's the changeup hanging, then he's got to work on that. But I think once he gets his feet wet, I don't know if I'd say he starts in Lake County next season. I think he'll get up there, but they're going to take their time with him, meaning the Indians organization, and I certainly don't blame him on that. But so far, so good for Brady Aiken in Mahoning Valley.
All right, so some other news has happened since we last talked to you, and it unfortunately is not great news. Well, depending on how you look at it, his hit streak ends at 50 games. Man, what a run he has been on. You think about when the hit streak started on May 27th in Lake County, and you think of all the stuff that's happened. I mean, the Cavs weren't even in the finals yet. We've had our presidential nominations. We had party conventions. We had the MLB All-Star Game. The Olympics have come and are almost over. Everything seems to have happened since his history started. When you think about it, just how long it's been since he didn't get hit, and it ended as we speak tomorrow, Sunday. So last Sunday on the 13th. So during that hit streak, he batted .386. He had 78 hits in 50 games, 8 homers, 15 doubles, a couple triples, 42 RBIs, walked 10 times, only struck out 29 times, a couple steals, .414 on base percentage, .599 slugging percentage, and an OPS over 1,000 during that streak. So really, it's not just the matter that he was able to get a hit in every game for 50. He wasn't just going like 1 for 4 or 1 for 5 every night. He was really putting up some impressive numbers. And you look at just those splits during that 50-game stretch. It really is impressive and really indicative of what he has been able to do as far as developing as an offensive player, as well as an overall player, because he's been able to do some good things on defense too, which has warranted his promotion to Lynchburg, where he is also.
Oh, he's been mashing all season. If there was a organizational MVP award to give out, I think you might have to put him at the top of your list. I mean, all season he's been great. Aside from this massive hit streak, he's been great all season. And we've talked about it before, just his development and how far he's come along. It's what we needed to see from him. 50 games is amazing. It's historic. I believe it's, the third longest in minor league history, right behind Joe DiMaggio and a couple – and I forget the other name. But anyway – this is what we need from him. 50 games, you can't predict that, but we need him to show that he can do it offensively, not just defensively. And so far, he's cemented himself. To Gomes, Perez, and then Mejia in the catching depth, and kind of called it a blessing in disguise that the Jonathan Lucroy trade didn't go through so far. So Mejia projection, Jake. What are we thinking for him? Are we thinking Cleveland in 2 years? Maybe when Gomes' contract in 19 comes up. What are you thinking?
I think next year he starts at Akron. There's almost no doubt in my mind, with maybe him and Salters as the backup, and then Jeremy Lucas starts the year in Columbus. But as well in Akron, consider calling him up to Columbus mid-season. And I'm not predicting another massive hit streak like he had last year, of course, but had this year, of course. But if he can and still continue to develop behind the plate and work on his defense, I see no reason why he shouldn't be considered call up Columbus at some point in the season next year. And then after that, who knows? Maybe he could, at best, maybe he could be a September call up next year. But I would say, yeah, maybe we're thinking like 2018, 2019. Maybe 2018 right now would be a realistic expectation for when Mejia will first be called up. I don't know if he'll be taking over the catching position for the Indians at that point, but that's when I think he'll see time in the majors at the earliest.
Now, here's what's interesting to me is Gomes' contract is up in 2019, and I know he's been hurt, and I know he's struggled hitting, but, how much does that play into Mejia and his timing for what the Indians consider him to be ready for the major leagues? And if it is 2019 and we're looking at Gomes in a contract year, we'll see how he does, I guess. But 2019 could be the year Mejia really steps in and fortifies that catching role.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it all depends on how Gomes does next season. How Gomes is playing, I think will kind of play into how they handle Mejia's development, whether or not they feel like he should stay in Akron for a full year, or whether or not he's ready. They believe he's ready to move up to Columbus. So at this point, what we can expect from Gomes, because again, the last couple of years he's had injuries. But the offense, to me, is what's going to dictate how they handle Mejia. So Gomes' performance, at least in the first half next year, by around wherever Gomes is and wherever Mejia is, I think that that we might see Mejia move up to Columbus, and maybe Gomes, maybe they consider a role and they consider scouring the market for a veteran catcher, or maybe they even call Jeremy Lucas. I don't know, depending on where he is. So the catching position is going to be an interesting position to follow the next couple of years because the Indians have Gomes and Perez at the major league level. Lucas is moving up to AAA, and he will more than likely be at AA to start the year. So things are going to get a little interesting behind the plate for the Indians over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. I'm excited to see how he carries it on into 2017, if he can go up to Akron at that next level, because there's quite a differentiation between the talent level in Akron or AA and the talent level in high A, which in the Indians' case is Lynchburg. So if he can put something nice together next season in Akron, then I think that's not doing nothing but helping his development.
Talk about some of the recent pitching performances throughout the farm system right now. There have been some pretty good runs for the starting pitching, especially at the upper levels. A guy who's really turned the season around after getting off to a rough start is Rob Kaminsky. He has pitched 16 times since coming off the DL, where he had back issues. He's gone 7-5. He has a 2.89 ERA. He pitched actually on Friday night, 7 innings of 1-run ball, and Akron's 5th straight win. They've been on a run lately, and He's walked only 25. He struck out 68. Opposing hitters are batting only 238 against him. I mean, not the kind of numbers that really blow you away necessarily, but still pretty impressive nonetheless, considering how he started. He had very little command, and he was working deep into a lot of counts, not able to work deep in games. And in talking to him, coach at Akron, Tony Arnold, I learned that he was chronic back issues that have been a problem throughout his career. So he and Tony have been working together to try to figure out some mechanical adjustments to alleviate some of that back soreness and back tightness, and still be able to fully execute his pitches. And now that I think they found some kind of mechanical adjustment to the point where he can execute his pitches without aggravating that chronic back tightness. And what has really helped him is that he's really found his curveball again, which has been his bread and butter ever since he came up. And coming up at the Cardinals after being drafted in the first round by them, that was one of the things that scouts looked at very favorably, was him being able to throw and execute his curveball and get some swings and misses with it. He's not getting a ton of strikeouts, but he's doing better than he was, and he's actually, I think, doing better than he has most of his career as far as strikeout rate goes, as far as his last 16 starts. So, Corey, just talk about what your thoughts are on Kaminsky and what you've seen from him just based on the numbers.
I mean, it's hard because I know he was hurt and he's done well lately, but with all the pitching depth that the Indians have in the system, Clevenger and there's Merritt and Plutko, we've kind of swept Rob Kaminsky under the rug a bit, don't you think? And I know the Indians got him for quite a steal in that Brandon Moss trade. I mean, he was the Cardinals, I think, number 3 prospect at the time, which for a guy like a Brandon Moss, who's a one-dimensional player, he hits 240. That's quite a steal for the Indians. But aside from the back troubles this season, all things considered, I mean, he's looked solid overall. And I hope he can find command of that curveball, because that's left-handed pitching depth that is really hard to come by. As we just found out, the Indians paid the price for an Andrew Miller and a Justice Sheffield. So I think he needs to get healthy, and he's certainly made the strides to do that. But he needs to get healthy, and he needs to get back on track, because, you look down the road a couple years from now, he could be a vital part of that pitching rotation in Cleveland. And I know the Indians had their starters locked up for quite some time, but you got to come to a point where you have to think beyond that a bit. And Kaminsky, as a lefty, again, it's a valuable commodity. He's a guy who was regarded as a high prospect for the Cardinals. He's regarded as a pretty high prospect for the Indians. So he needs to come around and he needs to get healthy and really take on that role as the left-handed guy in the system.
I will say that, kind of perspective, I don't think that, with all due respect to Kaminsky, I don't think that he has the kind of talent to live up to that prospect ranking that they had he had a Cardinals system. I think he might have been overrated a little bit. That's not to say he's not a good prospect or a good talent, but for him, I think that getting him for Brandon Moss, I think it might be more of an even swap than fans might realize, just even despite what the rankings might say. He's still a pretty high rated prospect in the Indian system, but he's not like a first round, he's a first round talent, but the Cardinals picked him like 20 in the 20s or 30s. I think they're getting like a top 5 or top 10 pick for Brandon Moss. But I would say that at the same time, though, I would say that could definitely make things interesting.
He could
move forward, talking about the pitching staff, the rotation, or maybe they consider moving him to the bullpen. As we know, the Indians are short on left-handed bullpen depth. Maybe he nice curveball, and he throws a decent fastball, a low to mid-knees, so maybe that could also play up in the bullpen down the road. Who knows? But right now, I think the Indians are looking at him as a starter, and the way he's pitching right now, I would him out of the rotation now because I think they would want to see how he does moving forward. Some of the other guys, though, who have pitched well lately are both up in AAA. Ryan Merritt, who saw some brief time in Cleveland in their bullpen. He appeared in that one game out of the bullpen for Cleveland, pitched a shutout inning. But in the last 5 starts he's made for Columbus, though, which included him going up to Cleveland in between, he's gone 5-0. He's posted an 0.84 ERA. He's only walked 2, struck out 22 in 32 innings, which is not uncommon for him since he's a pitch-to-contact guy. And hitters are only hitting .215 against him. So that tells me that Merritt, he struggled with command a little bit early in the middle part of the season. It seems like he's got his command back, and he's spotting his pitches as well because he's getting 15 against him. That tells me that he's getting weak contact, and they're hitting them. He's getting ground balls or getting weak fly balls or pop-ups. And, he's getting a decent amount of strikeouts, too, for the kind of guy that he is. Remember, he's a pitch-to-contact guy who can also get some swings and misses here and there. So, view him right now, I think, as a bullpen prospect, but to see him, 5 starts, 32 innings, that means he's averaging over 6 innings to start. I still would think that provide some value as a starter, and while this opportunity may not present itself right now because the Indians have some decent pitching depth, including Mike Clevenger, who is the Indians' 6th starter right now, he still provides some value as a starter for the Indians in their depth. And if knock on wood, the time were to come where the Indians would need him to step up and become a starter, I think that he might be able to provide some value in the big league rotation for the Tribe.
He could. Now, what I hope for him is that the Indians don't waiver him with, okay, you're going to start here and then we'll send you back down for a little bit, then you're going to be in the bullpen. I don't want that to happen. I'm not a fan of that. If you're going to bring him up as a starter, then keep him as a starter. If you're going to bring him up in the bullpen, then keep him in the bullpen. I know he can make a spot start here and then, and he can go back in the bullpen when needed, but I think you got to have that consistency and that continuity with him. He's a great arm to have, and he's a great asset to have, and I'm sure he has the ability to go either way as a starter or bullpen arm, but I don't want to see him start a game and then he's back in the bullpen for a month and then he makes another start. I don't think they're going to do that, but it wouldn't shock me if they did, put it that way.
Well, I got to know Merritt again. He came through him a little bit, and he's another great guy. He knows what he needs to do. He knows what the Indians how the Indians value him, and he's willing to pitch wherever they want him to. So, and being that kind of soft tossing lefty who just pitches the contact, moving him back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen is necessarily going to hurt his development, just because I don't think he really has to make a ton of adjustments between going from the starting rotation to the bullpen, other than the obvious stamina thing. But he's not a hard thrower, so he's pretty much the same guy whether or not you pitch him in the bullpen or in the rotation. So that's why I think that he could, at least to the swing man for the Indians moving forward in that depth department, whether or not he moves to the bullpen full time at some point, and then becomes who can make a spot start here and there. But that's my feelings on it. That I think that he could, moving him from the rotation to the bullpen and swapping him back and forth might work better for him than some of the other pitchers that they have in AAA. So it's like, say, a Mike Clevenger or Adam Plutko, whereas switching them back and forth from the rotation to the bullpen might be more detrimental to their development.
Well, you know what? In Clevenger, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't do that for him, but look what he did in Cleveland the other day. He came in the 3rd inning and he threw what? He threw 6 or 7. I mean, he came in and he dominated in that game where Salazar got pulled in the 1st inning, and then he came out of the bullpen and did well. So, I mean, it can happen. I just don't think that for players' morale, you waiver him back and forth. And I think it's okay to have the ability to do that, but you got to find some consistency and continuity in there.
All right, so about also in AAA, also a guy I got to know in Akron. One of the know in Akron, he always a pleasure to talk to and interview, and even just BS with every now and then when you're not on the clock, so to speak. Adam Plutko, last 5 starts for Columbus, he has pitched very well. 3-1, 30 2/3 innings, so he's also averaging about 6 innings a start. Earns 2.35 ERA. He's only walked 6 and struck out 31. And he was another guy who was struggling with command for a little bit in the middle of the season. So to see him get those walks back down and get those Ks back up, really impressive. And I think he's knocking on the door to be ready to be called up to the majors. Again, it's another knock on wood situation where hopefully the Indians don't need him. But if they do, I think that even more so than Merritt, even though Merritt has more experience at AAA level, Plutko could be a guy who could step in and become a pretty valuable starter, because I think realistic expectations for him would be like a 3 to 5 starter. But if everything falls into place for him, I think he could be maybe a 2 or 3 starter type. He's got that kind of good stuff. He doesn't throw insanely hard. He's not like Danny Salazar or a guy like that who throws nothing but smoke. But he's got some great stuff. He's coming up through the system. Pretty much every stop, everybody just comments about how polished he is, and I can attest to that, having watched him in Akron. He has close to a complete product as far as stuff is concerned, as far as mechanics are concerned. It's just a matter of him, and also, I should say, mentality-wise, he's got one of the most mature and down-to-earth outlooks as far as his pitching goes and his mental game goes. When he goes out in the mound, he knows what he is and who he is, and he doesn't try to pitch outside of his talents. And even if he pitches poorly, he knows to keep things in perspective and just go out at the time and try to make adjustments and pitch better. So very impressed to see him pitch well lately, and can't wait to see him comes where he gets to come up to the major league level and see what he can do there.
Absolutely. Plutko, he's been a student in the game, really. I mean, look, 11th round draft pick from UCLA back in 2013. Think of the guys he's been around, the Trevor Bauers, the Garrett Coles, those guys who have already had major league success. So he's been around quite a pedigree ever since at least his college days, and he's been solid. I mean, ever since he really entered the Indian system, he's been pretty solid. I mean, he has a career 3.30 ERA in his minor league career, and that's with 5 teams. So he's been around, he's gotten around, and he's done well. So I think that he's as solid of a pitching prospect as the Indians could possibly think of and could have. When the 40-man rosters come around in the next couple of weeks here, I want to know what the Indians are thinking on Plutko, whether they're going to bring him up for a spot start or two, whether they're going to bring him up in the bullpen, although, that's not my thing. But he's, like you said, he's as close to ready as you can get. And I think once he calls up, I think he has the ability to flourish up in Cleveland.
You bring up an interesting point about maybe bringing him up for a spot start or two. I'm wondering if the Indians and Terry Francona might think about following the Blue Jays example, like they're handling Aaron Sanchez. Because right now they have a 7-game lead in the division. They're playing for home field advantage against the Rangers right now, competing for the top record in the AL. But once they get into September and they have that kind of comfortable lead, would they follow the Blue Jays example of how they're treating Aaron Sanchez and go like maybe a 6-man rotation, or give some guys some starts off and maybe insert like Clevenger or a Plutko in the rotation just to kind of get some time off and get them ready for the postseason? That's you bring that up, and that's something could be interesting, because I think it's something we could see at least coming up in September when the rosters expand.
I don't think it would hurt either, because look at a guy like a Bauer or even a Salazar now who's coming off an injury. To get him an extra couple days of rest and to have Plutko start, who has been solid all season and has worked. And I'm sure he would love the opportunity to start a game deep into the season in Cleveland. So I think that it would be good for the club. I think they need to have, that rotation ready to go for the postseason, because that's what's going to carry the Indians. If they want to go deep into October, that's what's going to carry them, is that starting rotation. Salazar came back from that injury, did not look good. You had Clevenger come out of the bullpen, so you used 2 starters there essentially. So, Bauer came out against Toronto in the Naquin walk-off game, 8 innings and 13 Ks. So, I mean, to have those guys come out and perform well, but at the same time, you gotta have them rested up to a degree. So I think that to have Plutko or even a Merritt come up to make a spot start, I think that'll be really good for the Indians.
Yeah, interesting to see. And I think on our next show, we're going to focus on our speculating September call-ups, because we'll start to hear more about who is going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. And our next show will be at the end of August. So those rosters will be close to expansion at that point. So we'll start to speculate about who's coming up and who's not, and who we think deserves to be called up. So looking forward to that. But we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here today. It's been a great show talking about all the things going on in the farm system. Scrappers All-Star Game. Congrats to Erlen Serta winning the MVP. Congrats to Brady Aiken getting his first Scrappers win. Francisco Mejia, great run, 50 games. Got to hang your hat on that. And then all the guys who are pitching well lately. Who knows who we'll see in Cleveland when rosters expand, and who knows if we'll see some spot starts, some relief appearances. It's going to be exciting because the Indians are in a playoff race, but at the same time, we'll get to see some of the get their feet wet in the major leagues in the upcoming months, in the upcoming weeks, I should say. Corey, you have anything you want to plug before we sign off here?
To plug, no, but I just want to plug, stay tuned to this podcast, because as we get into the postseason in Cleveland, you talked about the 40-man. We're going to be getting into that a lot with guys like, is it Yandy Diaz? When's he coming up? Bradley Zimmer, is he ready? These pitchers that we were talking about today even. So a lot's moving. We're getting to the last part of the season where things are kind of wrapping up for some teams, like, the Mahoney Valley, they're going to be wrapping up first week of September. Lake County and Lynchburg are going to wrap up. And then you have, the Indians with the postseason. I think there's going to be a lot of great content coming to our site, and this is why you guys stay tuned to us.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and shut things down here today. It's been great talking to you, Corey, as always, and looking forward to the upcoming weeks. We'll talk about Major League postseason baseball and some roster expansion, so be sure to stay tuned for that. So, for Corey Christen and the Farm Report Podcast, I'm Jake Dungan, and we say to you,
have a good one.